Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 36 of A Letter to the King. If you're new to the series, A Letter to the King is my efforts to apprise us of what's been going on this week on Euro PvP 1. If we recall where we were last week, the Brits had grabbed up themselves a nice live oak port. The Swedes had taken Orinoco, and I think that was about it. Everything else had been defended. Pressure again, either flank of the Dutch sort of main holdings, always some fractious activity north of Belize around Bensalem, and on the Live Oak coast here, lots of biffing going on as people try and snaffle up each other's traders and half-inch their live oak, and ideally their fine live oak. So the alliances are settled again, although there are rumours, and I've sort of seen this a bit, that the pirate faction is now very much sort of split into two halves, with one half of the pirates taking some umbrage, in particular with the Danes, and the other half doing its normal random piratey type stuff. I should point out though that since the, whatever it was, 996 patch, everything's a lot quieter. This is the quietest I've seen naval action on, certainly on this server. We're almost where we were now for numbers when I came across from the old PvP2, with 600 or 700 at peak. We still get some great biff, but the last patch hurt and numbers are waning, and I think the faction that hurts the most is the pirates. They're the least looked after. There is some fighting for both of the alliances, but it's very much confined to those 2 to 4 hours that port battles get scheduled in, and occasionally if one gets pinged in the US time zone. But the Oceanic time zone is dead. It's reserved for people parking under cutlasses or running away after a failed battle where you're stuck in a battle screen. Okay, so there were, I think, 7 or 8 port battles this week, and they all very much went the same way. So the Brits, good old-fashioned hostility down here against Orinoco, actually generated through PvE missions, and then I think just as a little tip of the hat to the old-fashioned way of doing things, they decided to sail to the enemy port, and all was going swimmingly until a screener inadvertently pulled the fleet, or half the fleet, into combat. So the other half then got bizarrely tagged. No one can really understand how the BR worked, but it did. Whether or not there was an AI fleet around the side of an island that no one ever saw or something. But so that was a real fizzler. So the Brits never actually got in, basically. Between them, the French and the Swedes effectively screened them out. Although, like I say, it was a bit of a suicide screening event that stopped that one from happening. Now, the pirates decided to attack the French at Les Cays. Now, this was a little bit unexpected, and maybe a bit of a move by the pirates. They'd recently tried to take the north side of Haiti here, and it does look like the pirate faction does have their eyes on Haiti. They got pushed out of there, not by the Spanish, but the Danes. However, the pirates thought, well, let's give the French a bit of a go rather than the empty port that the Spanish would leave. However, they're back, and this time it's personal. The Danes came in and absolutely slaughtered the pirate fleet. I think it was something in the order of 25 ships sunk, 1 Danish ship sunk. So absolute shellacking for the pirate forces. And another exceptional show of Danish prowess when it comes to defending port battles. And then the Spanish had a little run at Mosquito Coast. Now this is very much like the Spanish of old, where they don't go for the adjacent property, they bounce 2 or 3 regions away, and they put a bomb into Mosquito Coast. Everything was a bomb this week apart from Orinoco. And they came up against the Brits. I think there was some Dutch certainly screening, and there might have been a few Dutch in the port battle itself too. And the Spanish were a little bit slow in entering. I think in the end there was 2 of them didn't make it in. I know for a fact they parked up, because the night before in Aussie time, we caught a few of them parking up, and captured ourselves the odd 4th rate. Very nice strong hull bonus live oak Agamemnon nom nom nom. Now this battle kicked off 25 versus 23. Now defending's hard enough with 25 aside, but 25 versus 23 is a problem. The Spanish engaged. After a bit of a fracas, they lost 4 ships, and I think they decided the better plan was to run away to fight another day. And look, that makes sense. If you're in there with a good ship, you don't want to be wearing down its durabilities. So once the whistle is blown and the Admiralty's given the order, getting out of there is not a bad idea. And that's exactly what the Spanish did. They'll be back. They've been quite quiet really since the patch, the Spanish. This was only, I think, their 2nd attack. So they're still blowing a few cobwebs off and getting their fleet commanders back together and the likes. Like I say, a couple of them didn't get in. That makes a big difference. So they got held off. Now the Danes had a crack at one of the shallow islands here. Let me see if I can find its name. Andros or some such thing. And this was predominantly sort of heavy rattleships. A heavy rattleship is a beast of a ship. I did a video on it a little while ago. Compared to the Mercury, absolute beast. And it's such a steady platform to shoot from compared to some of the other shallow ships that the Americans and a few Brits turned up, and they had a decent number of heavy rattlers, and they got well stuck into the Danes. Now the Danes were a bit slow coming in, so that teased the Brits and the Americans into a bit of an attack, and they got stuck in and they did a bit of damage to the Danish fleet. But then the Danes started coming in, and the Americans and Brits realised they were very much out of position. So they sort of pulled back to the towers a bit and left a few fights around the fringes. So it really was a battle more around defending the port in the end. But they did that comfortably. I think both fleets probably lost sort of around 10 ships or something of that order. But it was one of those ones, it was never in doubt. Although in a shallow water battle, you only have to take the one tower. The Brits and the Americans, and predominantly the Americans, were very safe defending that one tower. There was a few fights on the fringes going on, some heavy rattleship with carronades exploding each other. But a good port battle. It ebbed and flowed a bit. Covered a lot of water in that battle, with the shallow waters really zipping around the map. But at the end of the day, it was another defend. And the Americans held, and the Danes were sent packing. The highlight of the week was the triple bomb that the Brits had dropped, and the Dutch, well actually mostly the Dutch from memory. So the Dutch had put bombs into Cumana and Cartagena, here and here. And the Americans or the British, I can't recall who it was who put the bomb in, had threatened the live oak production of our Danish friends. Now the Danes are very partial to the live oak, as they should be, and they've built a very beautiful Lothian fleet from it. So the plan really from the British was that this, and the Americans, this was a bit of a distraction. The goal was to force the Danish fleet here and then stretch the Allies down south. So the Dutch met stiff resistance at Comana and really took a bit of a bashing in that battle. And that was one of those battles, I'm not sure if they had full numbers in. I think they did. They might have had a couple of second rates in there. But yeah, the Spanish held that with ease, and the Dutch took pretty heavy losses in that one. Meanwhile, the British and the Americans got their arse handed to them in record time at Savannah. I think it was less than 40 minutes to dispatch the vast majority of the British fleet. A few cowardly people like myself managed to escape. But it was a bit of a disaster coming into this one. So we were going in with a mortar brig and 24 first rates. We were going in with a Santee fleet. There was a reason for that I'm not going into. But we were going in with a Santee fleet, and unfortunately our mortar brig DC'd as we were entering the port. So 23 of us went in. There was a whole bunch of screeners. It was safe as, and then some. Let's say it was a new person on a Cerberus, 5-day-old account. He came into the port battle, and then we had to. Well, we saw that straight away. So that the last Santee, we asked him to hold in case the guy with the mortar brig could get back in, and as he held, another player jumped in a Bucentaire, and then when the battle started, the Bucentaire instantly escaped, and the new guy in the Serb basically crashed into most of the British ships and sailed around ramming everybody until eventually he sunk. And I don't know if it would have changed the outcome of the port battle, but certainly not having your mortar brig in there basically meant the Brits had little choice other than to get stuck in, and the Danes had just got the Biffing fleet, and they brawled the Brits. The Brits again went into the brawl. I really think they need to come up with plan B, personally. There was a plan actually, but it didn't happen. There was a lot of collisions as the brawl began, and any chance of a plan fell to pieces with that. And the Danes, they smashed them. I think probably best part of 15 ships at least, and maybe more were sunk on the British, and I don't think the Danes lost a single ship. However, it did mean that the Danish heavy Lothian fleet was up here, which left the Spanish to defend a Danish-led, British-supported first-rate fleet. And there's a forum post in the Nation thing called Good PB Battles, and in there one of the chaps has put up a video of this battle, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best battles I've seen for a long time. And there was two reasons for it. First of all, the Spanish played very well, and at the 35-minute mark, if you watch the video and you don't know the outcome, you'd probably put your money on Spain to defend, if not biff, the British fleet. But then just 2 or 3 moves led to a number of Spanish ships that were perhaps on half health all of a sudden having to manoeuvre to protect their weak sides, and as they did that, they then it had this domino effect where it opened up other ships to be focused down on, and you just had this, it was like a ripple effect go through the Spanish fleet, where instead of them trying to sink the British, which they were very much doing for the first 30 minutes, it was the Spanish trying not to get sunk, and it's that change in mentality. And I also think the 2 guys, predominantly Dutch chap, and with the Brit sidekick, sort of a Batman and Robin deal. The Dutch commander and his able sidekick noticed what was happening very quickly, delegated groups to tasks, and the Spanish were vanquished. So Cartagena, which has, I don't know how many ships the poor old Dutch have put into trying to take Cartagena over the last, say, 8 weeks, all through this patch and the last 5 or 6 weeks of the previous patch, but it's finally back in Dutch hands, and there'll be a good number of memorials, I think, along the dockside there. And then just as the week was coming to the close, the Brits, bless their cotton socks, combination, in fact you can still see my mission markers, a combination of hostility missions, and then in what was a bit of a, let's see if this will work, there was a whole bunch of missions that we'd taken up in Salamanca Bay itself. So the lads sailed 8 or 9 Indiamans in. They dropped about 45% more hostility with bombs, and then started AI fleeting in Indiamans, where they've ticked over the last sort of 15 to 20% of hostility. That resulted in some good PvP as the Spanish came out to twat the Brits, and a few ships changed hands. So that was it this week. So the thing to note is that of the 7 port battles, only 1 was won, and the rest were defended. And yeah, naval in action. And there's 2 reasons for this. There's not that many port battles. 7 is not many, and it's much easier to defend, as it should be. But when you've only got 7, it tells more, doesn't it? So if we work on the basis that, you're only going to win 30% of port battles, the Danes are the kings of defending ports at the moment. They really, especially first rates, they know what to do. The Spanish, we know, are good at fourth rate defence. We've seen that time after time after time. So it's going to be a bit tricky. However, we've got the new patch coming soon. And the new patch gets rid of the current port battle instance and replaces it with a land-in port battles, where the expectation is different ports will have different characteristics, and those characteristics, I suspect, will favour one side over the other. We may well start with the defenders always having their back to the coast, so if the wind starts in your face and you've got land behind you, your manoeuvrability is going to be savage, isn't it? Eh? So that's going to force you to come out. I don't think that would affect the Danes, they kind of come out anyway. But land will be in there. I don't know if there'll be any fortifications. I don't know if the mortar brig will become a vital instrument if there's them big ass square forts in there. The mortar brig might be important, might even be important to bring a couple. Boarding might become a thing again. We don't know, do we? So let's see how that goes. So, where do we expect to see some action? Well, we saw the Brits have set up hostility at Bacala, around, what's its name, Salamanca, or Salmonella here. Now, land-in port battle for this one should be fantastic, because this is just this bugger of a bay. It's an arse to get up, really hard to get up, because it's very, very narrow stretches and easily defended. So it's very hard to get your fleet in there. I almost hope Spain let us in so we can see the new port battle, but I don't expect them to. Neither they should. I just hope. I'm not saying they should, and I'm not saying they're bad if they don't. I'm just saying I hope they do, so we can see the new port battle. Obviously, along the Live Oak coast, there'll be the normal fractious. There is an expectation on the Allied side between the Dutch and the Americans and the Brits that there'll be a hail of bombs landing, especially with the new port mechanics. Because the new port mechanics, of course, will mean the mistakes will be made. People won't know the way to defend them. So now is the chance, perhaps, to take that port you've really been struggling to take, because people won't know how to defend these new ports properly. Will fast ships make a difference as you run into circles to get BR points? Will the devs balance it properly first time? Hey, evidence would suggest, previous patches evidence would suggest, no, they bloody won't. So you'll probably find that, a port battle will be over in 6 minutes or something. We know that the Dutch covet these lands, so we'd expect to see some more tries around Pampatar and in this little spit of land here. The Windward Islands is always getting its backside slapped, so we'd expect to see some slappery there as well. So here you go, look at that. Wow, look at all that action, naval in action, here we are. So the Dutch took 4 ports and the Spanish lost 4 ports, and for the first time in 36 weeks, the British didn't take or lose a port. Good grief. So that's more or less it, except of course we've got a patch coming. So what are we expecting to see in the patch? The new port battle mechanics, perhaps some new crafting mechanics, some new ROE mechanics. Talking of ship tows, being able to send your ships from port to port, that would be nice. Assuming it has some cost or cooldown. But that'll be nice, that'll cut out some time. And of course there's these new PvE and PvP instances. So the PvE instance will be a mission lobby entrance where it's you versus PvE, and waves of PvE keep coming. And the sort of scoreboard, a leaderboard of the top 10 is kept, and at the end of a period of time, I'm not quite sure how long that will be, you get yourself some prizes, maybe some sexy blueprints or some paints or whatever. And then there's going to be a PvP zone which sort of rotates, I believe, between shallow and deep water, and anyone can sail in there and participate in PvP. And there's some sort of tally of how well you do. I'm hoping it's a sort of BR and kills tally, not just a pure kills tally. Whether or not assists will count, we don't know, but it would seem sensible to me that you'd get points for a kill and assist, and a multiplier for the BR thing you kill, so that we don't get twats sailing in their alt cutters, so their mates in their Bucentaires can insta-give them. And again, the top 10 will get prizes. We know who they'll be. We know those sailors, I think, who are the doyens of small ship skirmish PvP, and so we expect them to see them get rewarded. So let's hope that the new patch makes up for the last patch, because the last patch were crap. All the intentions were good, many of them suggested by the player base, but fundamentally ROE was broken. Tagging ships was redonky donk with AIs and circles the size of small oceans. And hostility was completely broken, and of course port battles are sort of, because they're so static and predictable, they're easily defensible. So that's it for this week's naval action. I'm hoping tomorrow will be the patch. If it is, that'd be very exciting. Get us all back into the game. I probably played less this week than any other time in the last year. Easy, the last year. So come on, my little naval action. Let's get some wind in your sails, baby, and get us back into it. So that's it for this week. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. I'll see you on the ocean, and I will catch you.